My family expected me to babysit their kids on a vacation so I booked a solo trip to Greece and left them in chaos. It sounds dramatic, right? But I swear, this is exactly how it went down. Let me explain. I'm Barry, 32, and I've always been the reliable one. The guy who shows up when the rest of the family needs help. I'm the one who loans money that never gets paid back, who spends weekends fixing cars or moving furniture. My siblings, Na and Brandon, know they can count on me, and for the longest time, I've let them. I'm the rock in the family, the one who doesn't complain. But here's the thing about being the rock: sooner or later, you start to wonder if anyone even notices you're there. Take this vacation, for example. Last Christmas, Mom pulled me aside and started talking about how it's been ages since our family had a proper vacation. Would it be wonderful, she said, if we could all go somewhere together? I remember feeling that sinking feeling in my stomach right away, but I didn't say anything. Instead, I asked, "What did you have in mind?" "Flora Cauda. Maybe somewhere the kids would love," she said, her eyes sparkling like she had a perfect idea. That was just the beginning. Fast forward to February. We're at a family dinner at Na's place. I'd bought lasagna because that's what you do when you've had a hellish week at work, right? You bring something easy. Na and her husband, Wesley, were talking about vacation plans again. The house they found in Scottsdale, she said, was perfect. 5 bedrooms, a pool. Great for the kids. Scottsdale, I asked. That's 2 hours away. We could drive up together, Mom suggested. How much? I asked, already suspicious. She pulled up the listing on her laptop. $350 a night for 2 weeks. That's about $7,000 total with groceries and activities. I let out a breath, glancing at the others. $7,000. For a vacation in Scottsdale. I felt my chest tighten. Na's eyes were wide, like she was already imagining the fun they'd have. Brandon nodded, looking at me like I was the only one who could make this happen. "You're the only one who can swing it, Barry," he said. "Na and I have mortgages. Mom and Dad are on fixed income." I should have said no. I said, "Let me think about it. Because who doesn't want to keep the peace? Who doesn't want to be the good guy?" The guilt tripping started immediately. Mom called twice the next day. "You're the only one who can afford this. It would mean so much to us." Na sent me videos of her kids jumping on the couch, yelling about how they couldn't wait for the vacation. Then came Brandon, texting articles about the benefits of family bonding. "It'll be good for all of us," he wrote. "We don't know how many more chances we'll have to do this." And you know what? It worked. I broke. I caved under the pressure. I booked the house. The excitement from everyone else in the family was immediate. Messages filled with excitement. Pictures of beaches, activity, ideas. It was overwhelming. I thought I was doing the right thing. I was helping the family come together. I was going to make memories with them. I didn't know I was about to become the unpaid childcare provider for a vacation I was supposed to enjoy. That's where it all started. But the moment I realized what they really wanted from me, that's when everything changed. A few weeks before the trip, things started to feel off. It wasn't just the constant planning that had been happening over the phone and at family dinners. It wasn't just the spreadsheets and calendars Na had been making. It was something else. Something I couldn't quite put my finger on, but I felt it nag at me. It was a Saturday when it all came to a head. We were at my parents' house. The usual family dinner where everyone was scattered between the kitchen and living room, laughing, eating, and watching the game on TV. The kids were running around as usual, and I was leaning against the kitchen counter, drinking a beer. Mom pulled me aside, away from the noise. "Barry, honey, we've been talking about the trip again," she said in her sweet, almost coaxing voice. "We've been thinking about some of the details." I felt my stomach twist. I already knew what was coming, but I couldn't have prepared for it. Mom and Na were sitting at the kitchen table, flipping through pages on Na's laptop. The quiet anticipation in the air made it feel like I was in the middle of some kind of corporate meeting. I could feel the weight of their expectations on my shoulder, stayed silent, waiting for the next bomb to drop. Na glanced up from her laptop and smiled. "So, Wesley and I were thinking we'd like a couple of date nights while we're there. You know, maybe hit up some of the restaurants in Old Town Scottsdale. The new wine bar opened up. It's been a while since we've had time for just the two of us. Oh, and Robert and I were thinking about a couple rounds of golf. Mom chimed in. It's been ages since we've had time for that. I wasn't sure where they were going with this, but I still wasn't getting it. Sounds great, I said, unsure of what was actually going on. Then it hit me. Na closed her laptop and looked up at me, a little too casual, like this was no big deal. So, we were thinking, since you'll be there anyway, you could help out with the kids when we go out. The room suddenly felt smaller, like the walls were closing in. I froze, processing what she just said.
Wait, what?
Brandon, who had been standing by the door, leaned in with a lazy grin. That just makes sense, man. You're single, the kids love you. You won't have anyone to go out with anyway. I stared at him, but my mind was already racing. Was this a joke? This isn't babysitting, Mom quickly interjected. It's family. I felt my blood pressure rise. Helping out? What do you mean helping out? I couldn't control the frustration building inside me. You want me to pay for this vacation, and then you want me to sit here and watch your kids while you all go out and have fun. Wesley shifted in his seat, not even looking at me. Yeah, but we're all making memories. Wouldn't be right for you to do your own thing while everyone's bonding. Wait a minute, I said, my voice rising. You're asking me to take care of everyone's kids. For what, a week and a half? And I'm supposed to just be okay with that? Na shot me an irritated glance. It's not babysitting, Barry, it's family helping family. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I glanced at my parents, hoping they would step in, hoping they'd see how messed up this was. But Mom just sat there nodding along, as if this was perfectly normal. How many nights do you want? I asked, my voice barely a whisper, almost scared to hear the answer. Mom flipped through her notes. Well, Na and Wesley want 3 or 4. Brandon and Kelsey want 3. Robert and I want 2 golf days, plus 1 dinner. 10 separate occasions. I asked incredulously. 10 nights of me watching your kids and you all go out. Don't make a big deal out of this. My dad finally spoke up from the living room. He was sitting on the couch, looking at me over his glasses. We're just asking you to help out. The kids love you, you're always so good with them. I stewed, the anger in my chest growing. This isn't helping out. This is being the unpaid babysitter while you all have fun. I didn't agree to this. Well, your family, Mom said, as if that explained everything. I could feel my pulse in my temples. It was all clicking into place now. They'd planned this from the start. They had no intention of treating me like a part of this vacation. I was just the guy they could count on to fill in the gaps, to foot the bill, and to take on all the work while they played. I was never asked if I wanted to go, I was just expected to. I was expected to fund the trip, provide the house, and now I was expected to babysit. I could feel my frustration turning into something else. Something deeper. I didn't say anything more that night. I needed time to think. I left early, went home, and sat in my living room, staring at my phone. I had 1,000 thoughts racing through my mind. But one thing was clear, I wasn't okay with this. The next morning, I did something I should have done months ago. I started reading through the family group chat from the beginning. The messages were a slap in the face. From now, Barry's going to love having all the kids around. He's always so good with them. From Brandon, we should make sure Barry has plenty to do. Don't want him feeling left out. From Mom, I'm so glad Barry is single for this trip. Makes the logistics so much easier. They'd planned this all along. The expectation that I'd be the built in childcare wasn't some last-minute request. It was part of the plan the whole time. They just didn't bother to tell me until I'd already paid everything. I sat back on my couch, the weight of it all sinking in. It wasn't just the money I had spent, it was everything. I had been their safety net for years. I'd helped when no one else did. But this was different. I wasn't going to play this role anymore. I wasn't going to be the guy who did everything for everyone else while they took me for granted. Not this time. I spent the next few days in a kind of daze. I couldn't stop thinking about what had happened at my parents' house, the way my family had just assumed I would babysit for the entire vacation. It wasn't just the shock of it, it was the realization that they'd been planning it this way, the whole time. They'd never really asked me if I wanted to go. They'd asked me to fund the trip, and now they wanted me to be their free childcare. I wasn't just annoyed, I felt used. That Saturday, I had plans to meet up with Craig, my old buddy from high school. We had kept in touch over the years, even though our lives had gone in different directions. I hadn't seen him in a while, and I could already feel that his straightforward attitude would be the kind of perspective I needed right now. He was one of the few people who knew the full extent of family dynamics, so I wasn't worried about airing my frustrations. We met at this greasy burger joint we used to hit after school. The place still smelled like fries and ketchup, and the booths were as worn as ever. It felt like stepping into a time capsule. "Hey mammy," giving me a big clap on the back as I slid into the booth. "Long time, no see." "Yeah, it's been a minute." I tried to smile, but it felt like everything was still simmering under the surface. We ordered, and then Craig asked, "So how's that family trip going? Your sister said something about it when I bumped into her the other day." I nearly choked on my drink. It's not going well. In fact, it's falling apart." Craig raised an eyebrow, leaning in. "What happened?" I let out a long breath and recounted the whole thing: phone calls, the spreadsheets, the assumption that I would be their unpaid babysitter for 2 weeks. Craig listened quietly, his usual smirk replaced with a more serious expression. When I finished, he just stared at me for a moment, as if processing what I'd said. "Wait a second," he said, his voice flat. "They actually expected you to babysit for the whole trip?" "Yeah," I said, shaking my head. "And the worst part is, they like it was no big deal. Like it's normal for me to just do it." Craig scoffed. "That's messed up. Please tell me you're not going through with it." I stared at him, trying to keep the calm I had built up in the last few days. "I don't know, man. I already paid for the house. I'm not sure how to back out now." Craig didn't miss a beat. "You back out by not going. Don't waste your time stuck in some Scottsdale house, playing the part they want you to play. You've got 2 weeks off work, why not do something for you? Take the loss on the house. You've already spent the money. You're not getting that back. But you know what you can get? A vacation. A real one, some you can actually relax. Somewhere you're not expected to spend the entire time fixing everyone else's problems." The words hit me harder than I expected. Craig wasn't wrong. I had been giving up my time, my money, my energy for years, all for the sake of keeping my family together. I'd been the reliable one, the fixer. But what had it gotten me? A trip where I wasn't even allowed to enjoy myself. I kept looking down at my plate, trying to think it through. I don't even know where to go. I mean, I can't just take a trip to some beach alone. It sounds pathetic. "Come on, man," Craig said with a grin. "Have you seen those pictures of Greece? Beaches, ancient ruins, amazing food. You could go to Athens, then hit the islands. It's the perfect place to just check out for a while, get some peace and quiet. And you don't have to answer to anyone." The idea sounded crazy. A solo vacation, after all these years of doing things for everyone else. But at the same time, it sounded perfect. I sat back, a small laugh escaping me. I mean, it's not a bad idea. I've never done something like this. Solo travel. Exactly, Craig said, nodding. You've been playing the role of the good son, the good brother, for so long. You've earned this. You deserve it. Don't let your family guilt trip you into being the free beer for 2 weeks. They'll be fine without you for once. I didn't say anything for a few moments. Just sat there thinking, maybe this was what I needed. Not just the trip itself, but the act of standing up for myself. Saying no when I was used to saying yes. "Yeah," I said, finally, a strange sense of relief wash over me. "I think I'm gonna do it. I'm booking a trip to Greece." Craig grinned, clearly pleased with my decision. "That's what I like to hear. Gree, go enjoy your time. Who knows? You might even come back with a whole new perspective on things." "I'm definitely going to come back with a better attitude," I said, the decision already making me feel lighter, and maybe a tan. After we finished our meal, I could tell Craig's words had already started to take root. As I walked out of the restaurant, the idea of booking a solo trip to Greece didn't feel so insane anymore. It felt like the only choice I could make. I went home that night, sat down at my desk, and started searching for flights. I didn't care about the cost. I'd already spent the money on the house. But what really mattered was my time, my freedom. For once, I wasn't going to let anyone dictate how I spent it. I clicked through a few options for flights to Athens, and by the end of the night, I had my tickets. It felt like a small victory, but it was mine. I wasn't going to let my family's expectations run my life any longer. I had 2 weeks to myself. No kids to babysit, no family obligations, just me. And for the first time in a long time, that didn't sound lonely. It sounded like freedom. The morning I sent the message to the family group chat, I felt like I was stepping off a cliff. It was still early, just after 7 in the morning, and I had my coffee in hand as I sat at my kitchen table. My laptop was open in front of me, the cursor blinking next to the words I was about to type. It was all happening so fast. I had spent hours debating how to word it, but at some point, I realized there was no perfect way to do this. I just had to send it. I leaned back in my chair, took a deep breath, and began "Hi everyone. Something came up with work, big project overseas that I need to supervise personally. I won't be able to make the Scottsdale trip. The houses, you all can still go and enjoy it. Have a great time." I paused, looking at the words. It didn't feel real. This was the family trip, the one I had paid for, the one everyone had been so excited about. And now I was backing out. But I wasn't just backing out, I was choosing myself over them. Finally, I hovered my finger over the send button, second-guessing myself for a moment. What if they didn't understand? What if they tried to guilt-trip me? But then, I remembered the way they had spoken about me. The way they expect me to just be the helper, the fixer, the free labor. How many times had I agreed to something like this? 2 men for what? To be treated like a tool, a resource, instead of a person. I clicked send. Almost immediately, the notifications started flooding in. My phone buzzed with 5 different messages from the group chat. Then my phone started ringing. First came Na's message. "What? What project? You can't bail on us now. We've been planning this for months." Then, my mom texted, "Honey, are you sure? We really need you here for this. It won't be the same without you." I stared at my screen, reading the messages again and get it. Get it. They couldn't see it. This wasn't about the vacation. It was about the fact that I had been taken for granted for years. Grandin's message came next. "Dude, seriously, you're just going to ditch us? We've been looking forward to this for so long. Don't deuce." I felt my heart sink. I had to do this. I had to stay strong. But the guilt started to creep in, gnawing at me. The phone calls started soon after. Mom called first, then died an answer. I couldn't. They would just try to make me feel guilty. I couldn't let that happen again. I turned off my phone and walked away from the kitchen table. I needed some space. I grabbed my jacket and went for a walk around the block. It was still early enough that the streets were quiet, just the sound of birds, the chirping, and the occasional car passing by. The cool air helped clear my mind, but the weight of my decision still sat heavy on my chest. By the time I got home, I was feeling a little better, but still uneasy. I knew what I was about to do was going to change things forever. I was about to disrupt the status quo, and I had no idea how it would play out. I sat back down at the table, staring at my phone. The messages were still coming in, missed calls, voicemail. I just couldn't bring myself to look at them. Instead, I focused on the trip I had planned. I went back to my laptop, double-checked my itinerary, and smiled to myself. I had booked flights to Athens, a hotel in the city for 3 nights, and then I would head to the islands. I'd never traveled alone before, but there was something exhilarating about it. The freedom, the peace. I thought about all the things I'd seen in pictures, the white-washed buildings of Santorini, the ancient ruins of Athens. The idea of wandering those streets, exploring the ancient history, experiencing the culture, it felt like exactly what I needed. A real vacation. Not the kind where I was expected to play the role of the dutiful brother and son, but a vacation where I could just be me. When I finally worked up the courage to check my phone, I was flooded with a mix of anger and desperation from my family. My mom's message was the longest. "Honey, please, we need you here. You can't just leave us like this. This trip is important for all of us. We're not going to be the same without you." It hit me hard. I had to stop myself from replying. I couldn't fall back into the trap. I had to stop caring more about their needs than my own. The last message came from Dad. It was short, and the tone was different. "Son, call me. We need to talk." I sat there, staring at his message for what felt like an eternity. My dad was always the steady one, The one who tried to be logical when everyone else was emotional. I knew he was upset, but I couldn't do this anymore. I could keep being the one who sacrificed everything. I didn't call him. I didn't call anyone. I just turned my phone off, put it on the charger, and walked away. I felt like I had just made the hardest decision of my life. And yet, there was a strange sense of relief that washed over me. I had taken control. I had finally made a choice for myself. It wasn't going to be easy, but I knew I had done the right thing. The next few days were a blur. I had turned off my phone, ignored the constant bombardment of messages and calls, and tried to focus on what was ahead. I was about to Greece, my first real solo trip. No family obligations, no guilt trips, just 2 weeks of freedom. But even as I sat in my apartment, surrounded by the mess of packing and planning, I couldn't shake the weight of what I had done. I had spent my entire life being the responsible one. The one who everyone counted on when things went wrong. And I had played that role without ever really questioning it. But this time, I wasn't going to let them manipulate me. I wasn't going to sacrifice myself again, not for anyone. I had booked my flight to Athens, and from there, I would move on to the islands Mykonos, Santorini. It felt surreal. I had never done anything like this before. The idea of traveling alone was both exciting and terrifying. As the days ticked by, I felt my excitement slowly replace the doubt. I had worked hard for this. I had earned this time to myself. The morning of my departure, I woke up early. It was still dark outside, just the first light of dawn creeping through the blinds. I had that familiar pre-trip buzz in my stomach, half anxiety, half thrill. I grabbed my passport, checked my tickets one last time, and zipped up my suitcase. I made a cup of coffee and sat at my kitchen table for a few minutes, just thinking. My phone buzzed. It was a message from my mom. "Barry, please don't do this. We can talk when you get back. Just don't ruin this vacation for everyone." I stared at the message, trying to process it. She was asking me to give up my own vacation for the sake of their plans. The vacation that I had already paid for, the one they expected to be a free babysitter for. The guilt started creeping back, but I pushed it away. I didn't want to engage. I had to do this for me, no matter how much they begged or how disappointed they were. I grabbed my bag, slung it over my shoulder, and headed out the door. The early morning air was crisp as I walked to my car, the streets quiet except for the sound of birds waking up. The drive to the airport was calm. I wasn't nervous about flying. I was nervous about what I was leaving behind. I was leaving a family who had used me for years, and I was finally breaking free. At the airport, I stood in line to check in, my heart beating a little faster. The terminal was full of people, all with their own destinations, their own stories. Some were families, some were solo travelers like me. I realized that I wasn't alone in this. There were other people there taking control of their own lives, making their own decisions. As I boarded the plane, I felt a wave of relief. I had done it. I had taken the first step towards putting myself first. The flight was uneventful. I spent most of the time reading, staring out the window to music. When I landed in Athens, the city felt alive. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the city's ancient buildings. I made it. I'd arrived in a place where I didn't have to answer to anyone. I took a taxi to my hotel, which was tucked away in a quiet part of the city. The room was small but cozy, with a window that overlooked a street full of cafes and shops. I set my bag down, sat on the bed for a moment, and let a deep breath. I had done it. I was here in Greece, all by myself. And for the first time in a long time, I felt free. I spent the next few days wandering through Athens, visiting the Acropolis, the Parthenon, and the ancient Agora. The history was overwhelming, thousands of years of civilization right there, in front of me. It was humbling to be in a place where so much had happened, where so much had been built. The food was incredible too. I found a small cafe tucked in a corner, where the owner served me the best Greek salad I ever tasted. The feta was fresh, the tomatoes perfectly ripe. I savored every bite, sitting in the warm sun, watching the world go by. The more I explored, the more I realized how much I had needed this time away. No phone calls, no family drama. Just me and the beauty of this city. For once, I wasn't the guy who fixed everyone's problems. I wasn't the backup plan. I was just Barry, a guy traveling through Greece, taking in the sights, enjoying the food, and finally, taking care of myself. That night, I climbed up to the top of Liabetta Hill, where you could see the entire city spread out below. The sunset was breathtaking. The sky turned from orange to pink to purple, and the city glowed beneath it. I stood there for a while, watching it all, feeling like I was finally where I was supposed to be. It wasn't just about the trip. It was about everything I left behind. Everything I had allowed my family to take from me. And now, I was reclaiming it. I wasn't going back to the person I had been before. I wasn't going to be the person who always said yes, who always put everyone else first. I was going to live my life on my terms. And I was starting right here, right now. Greece was the beginning of something new. The next few days in Greece were a blur of sightseeing, eating, and thinking. The more I walked through Athens, the more I found myself reflecting on everything that had happened back home. My family's reaction to my decision, the messages, the gulls, they all seemed to fade into the background as I explored the ancient city. But the nagging feeling was still there, a part of me that couldn't quite shake the tension. I kept telling myself that I was doing the right thing. But every time I checked my phone, I was reminded of the mess I'd left behind. The messages from my mom and dad, the phone calls I'd ignored. I knew they were hurt, and part of me felt bad about that. But I also knew keep putting their needs before mine. Not anymore. By the fourth day in Athens, I decided it was time to leave the city behind. I was ready to experience something else, something new. I packed up my things, grabbed a coffee from the cafe down the street, and headed to the ferry terminal. Mykonos was my next stop. The ferry ride was smooth, and the sun shone brightly, reflecting off the crystal clear water as we made our way to the island. The wind was a little chilly, but the warmth of the sun was enough to make it feel like a perfect escape. The sea stretched out before me, endless and calming. I stared out at the horizon, feeling the weight of the decision I'd made lift from my shoulders. There was nothing back home I had to fix. Nothing that required my immediate attention. For the first time in ages, I could just exist. When the ferry finally docked at Mykonos, the island was as I had imagined. Whitewashed buildings with blue shutters, narrow streets wending through small shops, and the unmistakable scent of salt water and fresh seafood in the air. I checked into a small hotel near the beach. It wasn't fancy, but it had everything I needed: a clean bed, a view of the water, and peace. The next few days were a blur of beaches and quiet moments. I spent hours walking along the coastline, watching the waves crash against the rocks, feeling the sand between my toes. The sound of the water became my new soundtrack, a soothing constant that drowned out everything else. I rented an ATV one afternoon, driving around the island, stopping in small villages, grabbing lunch at tiny restaurants where the only customers were locals. Every meal was a discovery: Greek salad, grilled fish, fresh bread with olive oil that I could have eaten by the loaf. The food was as simple as it was delicious, and it tasted like freedom. One night, I went to a small taverna overlooking the wire, where I sat at a table by myself. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, and the taverna was filled with the sounds of conversation, clinking glasses, and the faint strumming of a guitar in the background. I ordered grilled lamb, fresh vegetables, and a glass of white wine. I was in no rush. I didn't have to answer to anyone. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I could finally breathe. As I sat there sipping my wine and watching the sky change colors, I thought about my family back home. I wondered what they were doing. Were they managing without me? Were they angry? Disappointed? I thought about the messages they had sent, my mom's plea, my dad's silence. I realized, though, that I didn't really care anymore. Whatever was happening back there wasn't my responsibility to fix. I took a deep breath, the air salty and fresh, and let it out slowly. My family had spent years taking advantage of me, assuming I'd always be the one to clean up their messes. But this was my time, my vacation, and I wasn't going to feel guilty for taking it. The next morning, I took the ferry to Santorini. As the boat approached the island, the cliffs seemed to rise up out of the sea, the white buildings perched precariously on the edge. I was struck by how beautiful it was, how surreal. This place was unlike anything I had ever seen before, so different from the flat desert landscapes of Phoenix, the endless highways and city streets I was used to. Santorini was busier than Mykonos, filled with tourists snapping pictures at every corner. But even with the crowds, there was something magical about it. The narrow streets were lined with shops, cafes, and bars, all with incredible views of the caldera. I spent my days wandering through the villages, getting lost in a labyrinth of white buildings, admiring the blue, domed churches and the flowers spilling out of window boxes. One afternoon, I hiked along the rim of the caldera, the sun beating down on me as I made my way from Fira to Aya. It was a long walk, about 3 hours, but the views were breathtaking. The deep blue of the sea contrasted against the stark white of the buildings. I felt small and insignificant, but in the best way possible. It was humbling to be in a place that had witnessed so much history, so much change. Later that night, I found a quiet spot on the edge of Aya to watch the sunset. There were hundreds of people gathered to see it, cameras ready, their eyes trained on the horizon as the sun dipped below the water. The sky lit up in shades of orange, pink, and purplement. It felt like time had stopped. As the crowd clapped at the end of the sunset, I stayed quiet. I didn't join in the applause. I didn't need to. I was here for me, for this moment, for the feeling of being in control of my life. The crowd could celebrate their own way, but I had my own quiet celebration. Standing there in awe of the view, grateful for the journey I was on. I didn't care if my family understood my decision or not. I wasn't here to explain myself to anyone. I was here because I needed to be. I needed this. And it felt like the beginning of something new. Something I had been waiting for, without even knowing it. The flight home from Greece was long, uneventful. I spent the majority of it reflecting on everything that happened, everything I had left behind. The cities I had visited felt like a dream now. Mykonos and Santorini. The tranquil mornings, the perfect sunsets, and the meals I'd said as if they were the first real taste of freedom I'd ever had. I had finally done something for myself, and it had been exactly what I needed. But the trip was over, and as the plane descended into Phoenix, I could feel the weight of reality starting to settle back in. I wasn't sure what to expect when I got home, but I knew I was walking into a situation I had never faced before. I had chosen myself. I had chosen freedom, and I wasn't sure how my family would take it. When I landed and switched on my phone, the flood of messages hit me immediately. 127 unread messages, 43 missed calls, and 18 voicemails. The numbers themselves were overwhelming, and I knew that the messages I had ignored were just the tip of the iceberg. I took my time, slowly walking through the airport, grabbing my bag from baggage claim. Everything felt so ordinary. The same smell of cinnamon in the air, the same crowded halls, the same dry heat that greeted me as I stepped outside. Nothing had changed, but I drove home in silence. My thoughts drifted between the sights of Greece and this waiting for me back home. The familiar landscape outside my window made me feel like I had never left. I parked my truck in the driveway, the grass slightly overgrown as always, the lights on timers to make the house look lived in while I was away. I grabbed my bag from the passenger seat and stood in the doorway for a moment. I had never felt so uncertain about coming home. Inside, everything was exactly as I had left it. The clutter, the mess I'd been ignoring for weeks, the stillness of the house. I set my things down on the counter and saw the phone vibrating in my pocket. Another message. This one from my mom. Barry, we know you're back. We need to talk. Come to Mom and Dad's tomorrow at 10 a.m. There it was, come to return to the family fold. The invitation, or perhaps demand, to discuss what had happened, to talk about why I had made the choices I had made. I didn't respond to her message. I just set the phone down on the kitchen counter, staring at it for a moment. It felt like my family was waiting for me to come crawling back. They thought I'd come back and everything would be fine. I'd apologize, that I'd go back to being the old Barry. But I wasn't that person anymore. The next morning, I woke up late. I hadn't slept much the night before, my mind racing between the emotional fallout from my family and the feeling of calm I had experienced in Greece. It felt like there were two different versions of me. The one who lived for his family's expectations, and the one who had learned to live for himself. I wasn't sure how they would collide, but I knew I couldn't back to the way things were. I made a cup of coffee and sat in the silence of my house for a while, allowing myself to feel the weight of everything. Then I picked up my phone, read through the messages from my family again, and prepared myself for what was coming. By the time I drove to my parents' house, the tension was unbearable. It felt like the walls of the house were closing in on me, like I was walking into a courtroom where everyone was already judging me. I parked in the driveway and saw their cars. Nas Brandons, all parked in their usual spots. They were all there, waiting. I didn't knock when I got to the door. I just walked in, my hands in my pockets, trying to keep my nerves in check. My family was sitting in the living room, arranged like a tribunal. My mom and dad sat on the couch, Nam and Wesley in the armchairs. Brandon and Kelsey sitting on dining room chairs they pulled into the room. Everyone was looking at me, their expressions a mixed confusion, frustration, and a little bit of anger. "Nice of you to show up," Brandon said, his voice thick with sarcasm. I walked over to the dining room table, grabbed a chair, and sat down across from them. "You said we needed to talk. Let's talk." Mom immediately started crying. "How could you do this to us? We were counting on you. You were supposed to be part of this. You were supposed to be here." I could feel the weight of their expectations pressing down on me. I could feel their disappointment, their frustration, but I wasn't going to back down. Not this time. "I was counting on me, Mom," I said quietly. "You were counting on me to be the one who fixed everything. You were counting on me to pay for this trip, then watch you kids you all went out and had fun. How is that fair?" My mom wiped her eyes and looked at me like I had just betrayed her. "You were invited. We just needed your help, Barry. It's not babysitting, it's family." I shook my head. "No, it's not. I paid for the vacation and I was supposed to be part of it. But the moment you decided I was just there to watch the kids was the moment you stopped seeing me as family." Na jumped in, her voice sharp. "This isn't fair, Barry. You've always been the one who helped us. You've always been the one who did everything for everyone else. How could you just leave us hanging?" "You don't get it, Na," I said, my voice finally breaking through the frustration. "I've been the one who's always helped. The one who's always fixed things, loaned money, spent my time. And for what? To be used. To be taken for granted, not anymore." I glanced at my dad, but he was quiet. He always had been. Always the one who stayed out of things until they came too big to ignore. "Barry, this isn't like you," he said softly. "We're a family. We always help each other out." "You don't get it," I repeated. "I've been helping for years, and this time I just said no. And that's okay. I'm not your backup anymore. I'm not your free labor. I'm not your ATM. I'm not the person you always go to when things get tough." The room went silent. Finally, my dad leaned forward. "Son, you embarrassed this family. Do you know what we had to tell people? That you bailed on us at the last minute for some made-up work project." I met his eyes. "I didn't bail. I went on a trip I wanted to take. A trip I deserve. And you all need to understand that." The silence was thick, but I didn't flinch. This was my life now, it had to be. The days after that family meeting were a strange mix of relief and tension. I had expected anger, but there was something different in the air. The confrontation had cracked something open, and I knew things couldn't go back to how they were before. The lines had been drawn, but there was a sense that maybe, just maybe, things could shift. I didn't hear from anyone for the next couple days. The silence was deafening, but it wasn't the suffocating sigh I had grown used to in my family. This time it was different. I felt like I had finally done something for myself, and in a strange way that made everything else easier to handle. My mom called once, just to check in. She didn't mention the vacation. She didn't try to gup to you or bring up the things I had said. She just asked how I was doing. "I'm good, Mum," I said. "Just getting back into the swing of things. How about you?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. We're okay. Your dad and I have been talking. We've been thinking about what you said." I could feel the tension in her words, but there was something else there, too. Maybe a little bit of understanding. "That's good," I said, trying to keep the conversation light. "Look, I know it was a lot to take in, but I really needed this time for myself. It's not about you, it's just, I've been putting everyone else's needs ahead of mine for so long." "I know, Barry," she said quietly. "I know. It wasn't much, but it felt like progress. Small but meaningful." We didn't talk about the specifics of the trip or the money I had spent. She didn't apologize, and I didn't ask for one. But the fact that she was willing to acknowledge the shift. Our dynamic felt like the first step towards something better. I spent the next few weeks slowly finding my rhythm again. I returned to work, jumped back into the routine I had left behind when I booked that flight to Greece. But this time, something was different. I wasn't running on empty anymore. I wasn't living in a constant state of resentment or guilt. I was present, but for the first time, I wasn't prioritizing everyone else over myself. One afternoon, a few days after that phone call, I was sitting at my desk when I got a text from Na. It was just a simple message. Can we talk sometime this week? Just you and me. I stared at the screen, trying to process it. Na had always been the one to shoulder the expectations, the one who demanded the most of me without ever saying it outright. We had always had a tense relationship, but this felt different. I didn't know if it was because of what had happened or if she had finally realized how far I had been pushed. I agreed to meet her at a coffee shop halfway between our houses. The conversation was awkward at first. We sat there, both of us unsure of how to start, both of us holding on to years of frustration, unspoken expectations, and resentment. Finally, Na spoke. "I'm sorry, Barry," she said, her voice quiet. "I'm sorry for what I did. I didn't realize how much I was depending on you for everything. For the money, for the favors, for the help. I took you for granted. I didn't see how much it was affecting you. And that was wrong." I felt a knot in my chest loosen, but I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to tell her it was fine, that it didn't matter anymore. But another part of me needed to hear her say it, to say it out loud, to own up to it. "I get it," I said, finally finding my voice. "I know you didn't mean to, but it was too much for me. I've been running on fumes for years, and I never said no. I let you guys take everything from me, and I never set any boundaries. I'm not doing that anymore." Na nodded, her eyes meeting mine with a sincerity I hadn't seen in a long time. "I don't blame you," she said. "And I know it's going to take time to rebuild things. But I'm going to do better. I don't want to take advantage of you anymore. I want to actually help when you need it, not just when I want something." I let out a breath, the weight on my shoulders lightening a little. It wasn't a perfect conversation, but it was a start. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like maybe there was hope for my family after all. It wasn't going to be easy, but at least they were starting to see what they had been doing to me. A few days later, I got a message from my dad. "I've been thinking about what you said, son. Your mother and I have decided to pay our own phone bills. And we're going to pay you back for the money you lent us. It's going to take a while, but we'll start paying you back $200 a month starting Nabaz." I was surprised. I didn't expect that. But the fact that they were willing to take responsibility their part in it meant more than I could have imagined. It wasn't just about the money. It was about the recognition that I had been doing too much, for too long, and that they needed to respect me, not just as a provider, but as their son. By the time the holiday season rolled around, things had shifted. It wasn't perfect, but there was a noticeable difference in how my family treated me. They asked before assuming I was available. They offered to pay me back for things, and they respected when I said no. Brandon, on the other hand, still hadn't come around. He kept his distance, clearly hurt by my decision. I didn't know if we would ever see eye to eye, but at least the rest of the family was making progress. 6 months after my trip to Greece, I was sitting at a dinner with Craig, catching up like we used to. My phone buzzed, and I saw that it was a text from Now. "The kids want to know if you're coming to Sophie's birthday party next month. No pressure if you're busy." I smiled to myself, typing back a quick response, "I'll be there. Want me to anything? Just yourself. We've got everything else covered." For the first time in years, I wasn't the one they leaned on for everything. I wasn't the fixer, the provider, the one who always showed up just because they expected me to. I was just me. And for the first time in a long time, that was enough. Things weren't perfect. There were still bumps in the road, but I had learned to set boundaries. I had learned to put myself first. And that, in itself, felt like freedom. As I looked across the table at Craig, I knew I was in a good place. "You know what, man?" I said, taking a bite of my food. "Things are actually pretty good right now." "Yeah," Craig said, living the dream. "Yeah, I've got my house, my job, my freedom. My family's learning to respect boundaries, and I've got a trip to Iceland planned for next year." Gree raised his glass. To freedom. I clinked my glass against his. To freedom.